Tonight on Reporting Scotland, 400 jobs under threat. The Falkirk-based bus maker Alexander Dennis announces plans to relocate to England.
We've got two cousins working Alexander's, and so they're going to be out of a job. And jobs are hard to get, so if they manage to get another job, fine, but if not, I think it's shocking.
We'll bring you public and political reaction to the news, also on tonight's programme.
Today, I can announce support for the Acorn project in Aberdeenshire.
Plans to boost the green energy, defence and IT sectors in Scotland as the Chancellor announces her spending review. We'll ask what the fiscal pledges mean for you. Funding cuts lead to the closure of a breastfeeding support service, sparking outrage among new parents.
And coming up in tonight's sport, on the eve of the US Open, three-time runner-up Colin Montgomerie believes Scotland's Robert McIntyre is good enough to win.
Hello, I'm Laura Miller. Welcome to Wednesday's programme. They've been building buses there for more than 100 years, but it looks like that chapter in Falkirk's industrial history could soon be over. Alexander Dennis has announced plans to move its operations to England, putting at risk up to 400 jobs. It's a major blow to the local area, which comes just weeks after the closure of the Grangemouth oil refinery. Here's our news correspondent, Jamie McIver.
An iconic operation in the heart of Scotland under threat. Alexander Dennis is a famous name in bus building with a long history and a major employer around Falkirk and Larbert. But for how much longer? The plan is to move manufacturing to Scarborough. 400 jobs in Scotland are at risk. Nobody from Alexander Dennis was available for interview today, but in a statement the company said it must take significant action to remain competitive, and it described what it called the potential job losses as extremely regrettable. There were few signs of activity at the Camelon site this afternoon. The staff were allowed home early after they were told the news. One major union reacted to the company's plans with dismay.
This is a terrible, massive blow coming in the back of Grangemouth. I mean, there's the chance now that we're heading into an industrial graveyard in central Scotland, and I think this has to be opposed. What we need now is the politicians to become involved here, to look at can orders be procured for Alexander Dennis, because it's buses being built in China coming across here. You're not having a green manufacturing base if you're bringing in everything for China.
This is the second big jobs blow to the area in recent months. The Grangemouth refinery is just a short drive away. There's concern about what the job losses will mean for the local economy.
We have friends with young lads that work there, and it will affect them.
We've got two cousins working Alexander's, and so they're going to be out of a job. And jobs are hard to get, so if they manage to get another job, fine, but if not, I think it's shocking.
The Scottish Government says it's been talking to the company extensively to try to reduce the need for job losses.
Well, since 2010, Alexander Dennis have secured more manufacturing contracts than other manufacturing, but they make the point today about the importance of prioritising local content. Now, that is not something that is within the Scottish Government's gift to resolve and is an issue that we have raised with the UK Government.
So tonight it looks as if a long story in Scotland's manufacturing history is drawing towards its end, and 400 people are worrying about their future.
Well, Jamie joins us now live from Falkirk. A worrying day there, Jamie, for workers and the community. Is there any realistic way now that these job losses could be averted?
Well, Laura, Alexander Dennis would not have taken this decision lightly. The question is whether anything could happen now which might lead to the company reconsidering. Is there anything which either the Scottish Government or the UK Government might realistically do which could lead to a change of heart? Or is this decision simply an indication of the kind of pressures big companies can be under in an internationally competitive market? It's worth remembering that this operation is of huge strategic importance to Falkirk, Larbert and the the surrounding area, but is it also of strategic importance to the whole of Scotland? No doubt that's an argument that's going to be advanced by some in the coming weeks. But as with the refinery at Grangemouth a few miles away, it's worth remembering this place isn't just of economic importance locally, it's also part of the area's very sense of its identity.
OK, Jamie in Falkirk, thank you. The UK Chancellor presented her spending review at Westminster today, a chance for the government to set out how it's using its day-to-day budget for the next 3 years. It is a big political set piece, but what does it all mean in practice? Well, Rachel Reeves says she'll be delivering the largest settlement in real terms since devolution. But the Scottish Government says Scotland is being shortchanged. Here is what was announced then. An increase of 0.8% every year for the next 3 years in the block grant. Now, it is up to the Scottish Government to decide how that money will be spent. Amongst the other announcements, the Royal Navy's nuclear submarine base at Faslane on the Clyde is to benefit from increased defence spending to the tune of £250 million. And £750 million is being put into bringing the UK's most powerful supercomputer to Edinburgh. There's also support for a project to capture and store carbon emissions in Aberdeenshire, as our political editor Glenn Campbell now reports from Westminster.
This computer is the most powerful in the UK. It's to receive a massive upgrade so that Edinburgh University remains at the cutting edge of this technology.
So it's super powerful, it's bigger, it's more powerful, it's quicker, it can cope with more data and it can do calculations much more quickly.
I call the Chancellor of the Exchequer to make a statement. Rachel Reeves.
In the Commons, the Chancellor also promised increased defence spending in Scotland, including at the Clyde Naval Base.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Investment in Scotland, jobs in Scotland, defence for the United Kingdom.
Rising spending on the NHS and housing here in England means there will be a consequential increase in the Scottish Government's budget over the next few years. But Scottish ministers think they are still being shortchanged.
The Treasury document sets out the comparators of the funding increases compared to UK government departments, and Scotland is not getting the same average increase year to year as other UK departments are getting, and the 1.1 billion is the gap.
From St Fergus in Aberdeenshire to Grangemouth on the 4th, the UK government's offering support for the Acorn project to store climate-changing carbon emissions under the North Sea. But there's not much detail.
We're backing the Acorn project, we're backing the development funding.
How much though?
Well, it'll depend on what the development funding is required. We're not funding the full case of Acorn because the business case still has to develop. That's why it's called the development funding, and it'll be what the partners need.
The Conservatives think the Chancellor is spending too much.
There will be tax increases in this. There is no other way that they can balance the books while staying in the fiscal rules that they've created without raising taxes. There will be tax rises in the autumn because of today.
The Treasury insists its plans are affordable, including the cash to spruce up town centres so that places like Kirkcaldy and its seafront can thrive again. Glenn Campbell, reporting Scotland, Westminster.
Well, government decisions on spending taken at Westminster do, of course, have real-world consequences. Our business correspondent David Henderson has been talking to people in Helensburgh and Dumbarton to see what they make of today's announcement.
A place in the sun. More than most towns, Helensburgh may feel the effects of today's big spending plans. Mike Davis was in the Royal Navy, serving on submarines at the nearby Faslane Naval Base, which is now set for a £250 million upgrade. So could that give a boost to local trade?
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, any building project in your community, without a doubt, will always improve. It might not be obvious straight away, but local builders, merchants, local suppliers, local jobs, local trades, there's always a knock-on effect. It's just a trickle effect.
Helensburgh's links with the Royal Navy are reflected here at its submarine centre. This submarine was built in the 1950s at the height of the Cold War amid simmering tension between Russia and the West. And some think history is repeating itself, with Sir Keir Starmer's government committed to building up to 12 new attack submarines based at Faslane, each of them much bigger and more costly than this one. At Studio 30 Dance Centre, they're preparing for a competition. Defence is a big winner today, with billions of pounds in extra funding. But so is the NHS, and that may appeal beyond the older generation.
I know myself, I've had to wait on waiting lists for several months, even to get blood tests and in-person GP appointments due to short staffing, so I think that needs to be a priority.
I work in the healthcare sector myself, so I know how the demand, the struggles and things like that, the waiting lists and things like that.
The UK government wants to make clear the era of austerity is over. But down the road in Dumbarton, I met people who wanted to see much more from them.
There's definitely needed a rebuilding scheme far bigger than what they're announcing now.
No social housing whatsoever, everything's been sold off, so there's no council houses anymore at all now. People are crammed into tiny little houses with many, many children.
Schools in general, when you do things like trips, well, parents are having to put in towards the cost than you do actually the schools usually put towards it, so I definitely would say schools, aye, definitely.
For years, living standards and government budgets have faced intense pressure, and since these spending plans are long-term, whatever they contain, there's no quick fix on the horizon. David Henderson, reporting Scotland, Helensburgh.
Well, our business and economy editor Douglas Fraser is with me now. Douglas, easy question, probably not an easy answer, but what are your thoughts on the spending review and how it affects Scotland?
Well, it's a big moment for Labour. It's had a very tough first year in government, trying to get onto the front foot with a story to tell about the rest of this Parliament. There's a lot of big capital projects. They've made a lot of 9 days of rolling out announcements about that for Scotland, as we've heard, the supercomputer, submarine base, and the carbon capture project for Aberdeenshire. Looking into the figures, a lot more spending in Scotland is going to bypass the Holyrood budget. The increase in the block grant to Holyrood is significantly lower than the total increase in government spending over the 3 years on average, 0.8% per year over 3 years in day-to-day spending for Holyrood, just over half of the rate for the rest of the UK. For capital spending, it's 0.3%. That's a sixth of the increase in capital spending across the whole UK. A lot of that to do with defence, of course. And that means some really tough choices for Holyrood. If it follows the Treasury's lead, it's going to be looking for a lot of efficiencies in the public services, using artificial intelligence, more efficient use of civil servants' time, and better use of land and buildings, selling some of them off where they're not necessary. We'll find out a lot more about what the Scottish Government intends to do about this in a statement later this month from Shona Robeson, the Finance Secretary. But we'll have to wait till nearly the end of the year till we get an equivalent spending review, and that's getting very close to the next Holyrood election.
Indeed. Thank you, as ever, Douglas, for helping us make sense of that all. Now, the First Minister has created a new cabinet post to prioritise the housing emergency. John Swinney's appointed Mary McCallan as Cabinet Secretary for Housing on her return from maternity leave. The junior minister who previously held the role, Paul McLennan, has left the government. The mini reshuffle also sees the appointment of Marie Todd as Minister for Drugs and Alcohol Policy, while Tom Arthur takes on her role as Social Care Minister. The changes mean the size of the government has been reduced. To some of the day's other stories now. And Police Scotland has agreed to a request to send officers to Northern Ireland after 2 nights of disorder in Ballymena. The Police Service of Northern Ireland asked for extra support under mutual aid arrangements. The deployment will involve an undisclosed number of public order officers who are trained to police civil unrest. 32 PSNI officers have been injured since the protests began on Monday night. The High Court in London has heard that a company linked to the Conservative peer Michelle Mone should pay back more than £121 million for breaching a government contract for surgical gowns during the coronavirus pandemic. The Department of Health and Social Care is suing PPE Medpro Limited for allegedly breaching the deal, which the firm denies. It was awarded government contracts to supply PPE after Baroness Mone recommended it to ministers. Both she and her husband Doug Barrowman deny any wrongdoing. The civil trial is due to last 5 weeks. Police have recovered a firearm in Edinburgh as part of an ongoing investigation into violent incidents in the east and west of the country. The weapon was found in the Roseburn Path area of the city around 11 a.m. this morning. Officers were making inquiries as part of Operation Portaledge, which is Police Scotland's response to the series of assaults, shootings and firebombing incidents in Glasgow and Edinburgh since March. Campaigners and supporters have been reacting to the news that broke late yesterday afternoon that the Scottish Government has stalled plans for a controversial holiday park at Loch Lomond. Ministers have previously been set to give permission for the development from theme park operator Flamingoland. Our reporter Katrina Renton has more.
This is why Loch Lomond is one of Scotland's most popular beauty spots. Breathtaking views, our scenery at its best. Flamingoland wants to build a £40 million resort here called Lomond Banks, featuring a water park, monorail, hotel and restaurants. The project would redevelop an area in and around the village of Bala.
The idea for this area has gone backwards and forwards. The initial proposal was rejected in September last year by the Loch Lomond and Trosachs National Park Authority, who said it did not comply with environmental and nature conservation policies. But that decision was appealed to the independent Scottish Government reporter, and it looked like the development was going to go ahead after the reporter said last month that they intended to grant permission subject to legal agreement between the company and the park. But yesterday, the Scottish Government recalled that decision, meaning Scottish ministers will decide if the development gets the go-ahead here.
There was strong opposition to the initial proposal. One petition attracted 174,000 signatures. Eileen Colley has lived in the area all her life.
It's miles too big, it would just dwarf. This is essentially a village and it's very popular. People come here from everywhere in the world to enjoy the scenery, which is iconic.
But this local minister says he was disappointed when he heard the decision had been recalled. Why do you think Lomond Banks would be good for this area?
I think it would bring employment. This is one of the most deprived areas, Western Berkshire is, in Scotland, and I'm chaplain to the Leaving Academy. I see the kids coming out and I think, my goodness, could some of them be employed at Lomond Banks on the real living wage? 40 million investment, I've got to say yes.
There is no proposal to bring flamingos here. It is the natural wildlife and scenery people flock to see. So is there an appetite for a holiday park here in Balloch today?
Our roads are bad enough as it is, and there's no way they can compensate the roads. And if they bring something like that there, it's just accidents waiting to happen.
I think it can only be good for the area. That's only my opinion.
And why do you think it would be good for the area?
Because look at it, there's nothing here.
It's just too big. I mean, we don't need a monorail. It's not Alton Towers at the end of the day, you know. Just scale it back a wee bit, you know.
Whether Lomond Banks development will ever become a reality is now in the hands of Scottish ministers. Katrina Renton, reporting Scotland, Loch Lomond.
Now, for many new mums, breastfeeding can be really challenging, especially if you feel you're not getting it right. And finding good support can help. Well, parents of newborns have criticised the closure of one service after its funding was cut. Breastfeeding Buddies ran in 5 hospitals and several community centres across the Central Belt. The health boards say they can support breastfeeding in other ways. Maura Kinnebra reports.
Oliver's mum found positioning him for feeding hard at first and relied on help from a breastfeeding buddy in hospital.
They were able to come and check that his latch was okay and just give me that bit of emotional support, because it is quite a vulnerable time for a new mother, being in this postnatal ward by yourself with your new baby trying to initiate breastfeeding.
Volunteers with their own experience of breastfeeding went into wards at 5 Scottish hospitals for over a decade, but the scheme has stopped due to cost cuts.
As a student midwife, as a mum and volunteer as well, I think it's devastating to see that support is going, which was so much needed in the hospital and in the community as well.
Almost 100 volunteers and paid staff have lost their jobs.
Everybody should have a choice in how they do it, but statistics show that 90% of parents stop breastfeeding because they didn't have the support to continue. So without the support there, it's not a choice for them anymore. They don't have the support to continue, so they're forced into something that they maybe didn't want to do.
Public Health Scotland says there's strong evidence breastfeeding protects the health of children and mothers, and in the past decade increasing rates among younger women, those from ethnic minorities and more deprived areas have reduced health inequalities.
Although breastfeeding is natural, it's a real skill. It's something that you as a mum learn, it's something that the baby learns, but it's also really important to have the support around about you as well.
NHS Lothian and NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde have said they understand concerns the services are being discontinued, but remain committed to continuing breastfeeding support in other ways.
It can feel incredibly overwhelming and you don't know if what you're doing is right and how your baby is behaving is normal. Having like the expertise of the peer supporters was really key for us in helping us to continue. I don't think I would have been able to otherwise, to be honest.
Maura Kinneborough, reporting Scotland.
OK, let's get tonight's sport now with Sheila, and it's a perfect night for golf, isn't it?
It is. I'm guessing that's where Lewis is right now on the golf course while we're doing the hard work. Yeah. Hello there. The third men's golf major of the year, the US Open, starts tomorrow in Pennsylvania, and world number 20, Robert McIntyre, has the ability to win it, according to former European Tour great Colin Montgomerie. McIntyre tees off his first round at 12:51 UK time. Montgomerie was speaking at Trump International Links in Balmedy, which will host two significant golf events later this summer. Brian McLaughlin has more.
It's the eve of the US Open, but we're here in Aberdeenshire to speak to a man who knows all about being in contention for a golfing major, particularly the US Open. Colin Montgomerie finished in second place on three separate occasions, 94, 97 and 2006. In 94 he lost in a playoff to Ernie Els. One Scot is in contention this week, that's Robert McIntyre from Oban. So how does Colin Montgomerie feel about the chances of a Scot winning a major this week?
I mean, yeah, he's there to contend. He's not there to compete and to make up the numbers. My God, no, he's there to win. And he's good enough to win. If it all goes his way, he can win. We haven't said that about a Scottish golfer for a long time. And it's great that I am saying that.
Here, it's a lot of hacking out of the rough. They still have to be extremely precise, but it's
so grateful to have won the US Open, worked hard to win at Pinehurst, and have been playing some good golf after that, still fine-tuning.
You have to realize that there's a little bit more golf left to play. Obviously the three big things.
Montgomerie will be back here playing in a seniors tournament, and then the following week the DP World Tour will be hosting a European Tour event on the very same course. So how does Colin Montgomerie feel about these events being played back to back?
I think it'll work very well. As we just leave, they'll enter and find what a great golf course is, and also how demanding it is as well. You know, they might hit the ball further. It doesn't mean they're going to hit it any straighter. And straight out here is key, or else you're in the dunes and losing golf balls.
So lots of golf to play up here in the northeast, but that's later in the year. For now, it's all about the US Open at Oakmont and Bob McIntyre's quest for a major title. Brian McLaughlin reporting Scotland in Aberdeenshire.
Football now, and Premiership newcomers Livingston have had another busy day in the transfer market, signing two-time Scottish Cup winner Stevie May on a permanent deal from relegated St Johnstone. The 32-year-old striker scored 10 goals on loan at Livy last season and goes back to strengthen Davy Martindale's men as they return to the top flight. It follows the West Lothian club's capture of another former Saint, Graham Carey, and Conor McLennan from Ayr United. Now, Scottish UFC fighter Paul Craig admits he's needing an exciting win this weekend if he's to stand a chance of another shot at a title. The 37-year-old from Airdrie has recently stepped back up to the light heavyweight division after losing 3 in a row at middleweight. He was due to fight Rodolfo Bellato last month, but the fight was called off at short notice because of a medical issue with his opponent and has been rearranged for Saturday in Atlanta.
We're starting off fresh as a light heavyweight, and it needs to be about performances. You're not going to get a title shot by just getting wins. In this sport, mixed martial arts and UFC, it has to be exciting wins, and that's what I'm looking for on Saturday night. I need to get a victory, but a Paul Craig victory. All guns blazing, a flying move. It needs to be something that gets people to stand up and realise that I'm back in the light heavyweight division.
More from Paul on tonight's news at 7. You fancy trying a bit of UFC?
I'll maybe try the golf instead. Thank you, Sheila. Well, we've got a wee bit more sports news just before we head to the weather. And Everton manager David Moyes has received an OBE from the Prince of Wales for services to football. The 62-year-old Glaswegian guided West Ham United to its first major trophy in 43 years in the 2023 Europa Conference League. Well, now Christopher is here with the weather and it's looking not too bad out there, is it?
It feels like summer all of a sudden, doesn't it?
Lovely.
Some sunshine, some blue sky and increasing temperatures. More the same tomorrow with a bit of rain. Thanks, Laura. Good evening to you. Yes, we've had a pretty warm and at times humid day across many parts of the country, 22 degrees in one or two spots. So some evening sunshine to come, and then overnight tonight, it's largely dry, but the cloud will tend to reform in places. One or two showers through the Hebrides. Temperatures there overnight and a few spots holding into the teens. Now tomorrow we need to look to the jet stream to understand what's happening. These fast moving winds up in the atmosphere. You can see them running to the south of us and then to the north of us, keeping low pressure to our west and then high pressure to our east, dragging in warm continental air, but at the same time we've got this heavy rain working its way northwards as well. That's coming our way later in the day tomorrow. Initially, it's dry with some morning sunshine, a pretty pleasant day in store, breezy certainly around northern and eastern coasts, and then cloud thickening in the west with outbreaks of rain pulling away from Northern Ireland and pushing in towards parts of the southwest come mid-afternoon. You can see though still many areas largely dry by 4 p.m, but temperatures up to 23, maybe 24 degrees. Towards the northeast it will be cooler with that breeze arriving off the sea. You can see that rain just pushing in towards the Minches there, and really it's the end of the afternoon into the evening that the wet weather really gets going. Some heavy, potentially thundery downpours through parts of Ayrshire, Inverclyde and Argyll. That was Thursday. Let's take a look at Friday now. We've still got low pressure situated towards our west, and we're still dragging in some warm and at times humid air from the south. There'll be some sunshine, variable cloud and a few showers, one or two rumbles of thunder. Temperatures though in some spots into the mid-20s. Now this weekend we've got a wet day to come on Saturday, but through Sunday high pressure tries to move in, and that means Sunday probably the drier of the 2 days. This is Saturday, you can see what I mean, outbreaks of rain, perhaps the odd rumble of thunder, a fresher feel though, 17 or 18 degrees. And then on Sunday the wind's now coming in from the west, so cloudier in the west, brighter skies in the east, with temperatures by mid-afternoon reaching around 19 degrees. That's the forecast for now.
Thank you, Christopher. Tonight's main news again, and up to 400 jobs are at risk in Falkirk and Larbert after bus manufacturer Alexander Dennis announced plans to move operations to England. And that is Reporting Scotland. Anne McAlpine will have your late news at 10:30 tonight. Until then, enjoy your evening. Good night.